Hello and welcome back to the Qreative Life Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Quraishi, but you can call me Q. This episode is a real treat. I get to sit down with journalist, film critic, adjunct film professor, and podcaster Zaki Hasan. Listen as we discuss what makes for great storytelling and what changes we might expect in the industry as a new generation of filmmakers takes the reins. Hi, Zaki. Welcome to the Qreative Life Podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I was honored to get your invitation.
Oh, please. You're a baller, and I think you know that. I'm honored that you would be on my show.
No, it's funny because I saw some of the hitters that you've had on already, and I'm like, so early in the life of your show to be asked to join you. I'm like, oh, wow, it's like I get to breathe rarefied air, so that's very cool.
Well, this is a podcast about living a creative life, and it occurred to me how many incredibly brilliant creative people I know after I started recording it. Like I know so many amazing people, but I don't know that many filmmakers or people who are in film or are in that universe. And so I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw a post of yours and I was like, Zach, that's who I am. So, yay. You are not actually a filmmaker though, to clarify. Are you yet?
I'm not.
Are you
I
planning
appreciate
to?
filmmakers. I think I went to film school with some ambitions in that direction. At some point, I realized that I prefer being a journalist and being a commentator, you know?
And a critic, we'll say.
Yes, that's
Okay.
right.
We're going to talk about that because you're obviously the big scary monster to a lot of creative people. But we'll talk about that. Today's an interesting day because we're recording the day that the Oscar nominations were announced. You have any thoughts about that? I think this should be published by the time before the Oscars come out.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, well, as I was saying before we went live, I was like, this is one of the first years in a while where I don't really need to have an opinion about it. So I just took it as news and I was like, oh, okay. It's a pretty good list of nominees for Best Picture, I'll say. Pretty much every single one of those movies is solid. I think some have more likelihood of winning than others, but it's been a terrific year for movies. I really all the award stuff, whatever, to one side. I mean, it's just I think that 2023 has seen a reshuffling in terms of the types of things audiences want to see. And there has been a rewarding by audiences of films that are willing to go outside the box a little bit. And we see that really well reflected in the Barbenheimer phenomenon, where people made it a double feature day where they watched Barbie in the morning and then went to Oppenheimer right after, or vice versa. And I'm like, that's just cool. Like the fact that people are watching stuff like that. And we've seen the collapse of the big blockbusters and the superhero movies. And even as a fan of blockbusters and superhero movies, I think maybe that's a good thing as well, because there's other types of movies out there.
for sure. This year I actually rediscovered movies,
Hmm.
like cinema. I don't know why, right? I do know why. It's because I don't have a job
Hmm.
anymore.
That'll do
So
it.
I quit my job, but no, I'm working, I'm doing things. It's just I had a lot of free time, and
Yeah,
I made it sort of like a little ritual over the summer on Fridays to go see a movie in the afternoon just by
that's
myself.
great.
Yeah, and there really is nothing like it. I mean, it had been a long time since I'd gone to the theater, and COVID obviously had a lot to do with that. But even before then, I wasn't going to movies unless it was something for my kids.
Hmm.
And I just really rediscovered it, and I'm very excited about it. Like I saw a lot of movies this year that I
That's
didn't,
awesome.
and random ones too. Like we have the Austin Film Society, and so I got to see on the big screen for the first time On the Waterfront and
Nice.
Close Encounters
Wow.
of the Third Kind.
Oh,
I
great.
know. I know. It was so good. I saw them both. Actually, it was a double. And because what it was is it was right around the time that new Wes Anderson movie came out,
Oh, sure. Asteroid City.
Asteroid City.
Hmm.
And he had written a book that went with it, and he talked about his influences. And so Austin Film Society was showing these movies that influenced him, and it just so happened that On the Waterfront and Close Encounters were on the same night. And boy, was
Okay.
that a treat. It was super.
It's
And
its own
now,
double feature.
yeah, well,
Not
totally.
quite Barbenheimer. That's Close Encounters on the Waterfront.
It was a little bit of a whiplash, but Wow. Like I totally get why everyone loves shit, what's his name?
Brando?
Brando. My
Yeah.
God. Why everybody loved Marlon Brando because oh my God, he was amazing. He's
Oh yeah.
amazing, right? Because I've seen The Godfather, or whatever, but when he was young, he was just like really he did an amazing job in this movie.
Have you
Anyways,
seen Streetcar?
I haven't. Well, I
Yeah,
have
Streetcar
on the
Street.
TV, but not like in
Okay.
a theater. Yeah.
Yeah, that man, I mean, you talk about Brando at his prime and sort of like just the charisma and sort of the sexual energy that he
Yeah,
embodied. I
yeah.
mean, it's so obviously it's so far removed from sort of the caricature that he became towards the end of his life, but I mean, it's just like raw charisma.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And he played it like you really felt because if you I love old movies. I watched a lot of them growing up. And when you watch those older movies, part of the charm is sort of like the wooden, stiff way that people are, and it's very
Hmm.
affected and unreal. And on the waterfront, he was just very real. It was very raw, and you
Yeah.
actually felt like this was a poor guy from the poor side of town who was rough and ready. And I was just so impressed by all of that. It was just a
Yeah.
very unusual classic movie for me to see.
Yeah, yeah. It's great.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start talking about you and what you're doing now. I know you were teaching for a long time. Are you still teaching?
Still teaching, still doing it.
Okay. Where are
Yeah.
you at?
So I'm primarily at San Jose State University. I've been there for 17 years now, teaching in their comm studies department and also their radio, television, and film department. And in addition, I teach at a couple different colleges in the Bay Area. And then on top of that, I'm also writing for the San Francisco Chronicle.
And you have a podcast.
I do. Yeah, the MovieFilm Podcast. One word, movie film.
Excellent. I've listened to it. It's good.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Thank you so much.
why would I not?
I just assume people don't listen to my podcast. I feel like that's a good way to go through my life. It keeps me humble.
No, I'm in no way under any assumption that I'm doing great work here either, but I really enjoy it. And there's something about the medium actually. I really am an audiophile. I like
Hmm.
listening to people. I like listening to storytelling and whatever. So to me, it's just really fun. I thoroughly enjoy it. Plus, I can do it while I'm doing stuff, right? I can clean the
Yep,
kitchen or whatever. Okay. So you're writing, you're podcasting, you're teaching. You also have a family. Let's
I
put
do.
that out there. You're a busy guy. You're doing a lot of
I,
stuff.
somebody recently was like, how do you do everything that you do? And I'm like, well, I don't sleep much and I drink a lot of coffee. And I was partially joking, but I've also, I've made it a point over the last year. I'm like, I'm going to get my 7 to 8 hours a night. I'm like, I need, like, that's just, it's not hustle culture to be like, I only sleep 4 hours. It's like bad for your heart health and everything. I'm like, I'm going to get my sleep. And I have to say, it has improved my life a lot. So, for
Yeah,
whatever that's worth.
yeah. Man, we're getting old. You gotta
Yeah.
take care of business, right?
Seriously.
Seriously. How are you doing that, by the way? Like, are you just going to bed earlier, or did you? Because some people just can't go to bed at a decent hour.
So, most of my classes are morning classes. So I'm usually, I have to be out the door by like 7, right? And so just based on that, I'm like, okay, by this time of night, I'm gonna be asleep. And I'm at a point now where I'm like, whether the kids are asleep or not asleep, I don't care. I gotta get to bed.
That
And
is a
and it's
very
funny.
dad thing.
It it's so funny because I got 5 of these people in my house, and like they all have these different approaches to bedtime, right? Like my oldest, he just turned 17. He's like sleeps whenever he want to. My second one, who's about to turn 15, he's like by like 9:30. He's like by hook or by crook, like between 9:30 10, he's asleep. And he just
Wow.
doesn't matter what else is going on. He just goes upstairs, he goes to sleep. And so one thing I've learned is like, you know what? I can't chase after these kids to go to bed. I'm like, they'll go to bed when they go to bed. All I can do is like, this is what's under my control when I sleep.
I
You
love
know?
this parenting philosophy. It's very Gen
My
X.
my wife might disagree vehemently with everything I'm saying, but I'm letting you know this is where I'm at. We go through this every night where like my 10-year-old, he's 10. He's like, Mom, like come tuck me in and read me a story. I'm like, he can tuck himself in, he can read it to himself. Like I tell my wife, I'm like, you gotta like let them figure this stuff out. Otherwise, they're never gonna leave you alone, But I guess I can say that as a
Is
dad,
he the baby?
He's not. That's the funny thing because he has a younger sister. He's the youngest boy, so maybe he's a little connected that way. But anyway, my point is like I having seen it with the older ones, I'm like, look, they're in high school now. They're mostly fine. I'm like, they'll figure this stuff out.
Mostly fine.
Mostly
That's the
fine.
best we can hope for, right?
That's I
For
was about
sure.
to say. I think mostly fine. I put that in the win column.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do your kids know what you do? Like, are they aware that you have a super cool job?
Well, I don't know if they consider it super cool, but they are aware of it, which is fun because you know my Voodoo library, which is all my digital movies, each of them, my older ones, they've set up like their own list of movies to watch. And so, the other day I was just curious, so I went through the list of movies that my second one, my 15-year-old that he has, and it's like, The Godfather and Dirty Harry and like all this stuff. I'm like, okay, so he's kind of I'm impressed by what he's curated for himself to
Yeah.
watch,
Yeah.
and I'd like to think that some of my influence, I don't know. You know,
Did you look at all of them?
I just kind of scan through. It's like whatever it is, like 35 movies that, and he's just kind of working through. In my digital library, I have like 1,000, 2,000 movies.
Wow.
Right. And so that's very useful for me, especially as a teacher, because, I can just pull clips up online right away and stuff. But, it's the paradox of choice where it's just too many things to choose from. So I love that these kids were proactive about like, oh, well, I can't scroll through all of these. So I'm going to go through and select my 30, 40 that I want to work through. And they're working through them, and it's the darndest thing.
Wow, I love that. I love that. I think it's fun when you get on sort of like a little vein and you just start going on, like whether it's a genre or a particular franchise, and you just, not, you don't even have to binge it, but just like make it a point to see
Hmm.
everything in there and get really comfortable and intimate with that universe. Um, let's talk about your students. Not we don't you don't have to be specific about them, but I would love to hear about what this next generation of aspiring filmmakers
Hmm.
or people, and not just people making film, but in the industry, right? Because not everybody goes and becomes a director or whatever. But what is it that you see as far as trends in the younger generation of people aspiring to film?
I see a lot of good things, honestly. Like for one thing, there appreciation of a good film is appreciation of a good film, and that's been very rewarding. Where, in my classes, whether it's art of film or alternative cinema or you name it, I try to select things that are going to be relevant to a specific topic. And, generally they span, from the 60s to a recent past. And it's gratifying that a student in 2023, 2024 can watch, say, Good Will Hunting and be like, man, that was amazing. And they have the same reaction that film, like I've been screening that film now for more than 20 years, right? And it's like I know that's one of my bank shots. I know that every time I screen it, people are going to come away having an appreciation for it. And that tells you something that the foundations of storytelling are applicable no matter when you're talking about it, you know? It
Yeah.
says something that The Godfather, for example, we were just talking about. Like, it's one of the great joys of my life as a teacher is I get to introduce my kids to The Godfather. Oftentimes, I'm the first person showing it to them, and they'll be like, "Man, that movie just blew my hair back." Still, 50 plus years later, and it works its mojo.
Yeah, totally agree. That was another one actually I saw on the big screen the first time I saw it.
Oh,
Um,
so cool.
oh my God. We have the Paramount here and they have like a classic movie series, and it was many years ago. First time I ever saw The Godfather, I saw it on the big screen, and holy shit,
Hmm.
amazing. It is
Yeah.
not overrated. I can say that. So that's good to hear. What do you consider then, like if you were going to maybe condense it, and we can't take your whole course or anything, what would you say are the fundamental elements of storytelling that work across time and across space when you're telling visual stories, like
Yeah.
in film?
So obviously scenario and setting and all of those things are important in terms of the visual medium, but I would take a step backward and say, and as I say this to my kids all the time, the story is fine, but before you get there, before you start developing your story, what you need to figure out is who is the character who is inhabiting this story. That's the most essential thing. Everything else doesn't matter as much if you don't get that part right. Figure out your character, figure out why we're interested in them, figure out what their journey is. Who are they at the beginning? Who are they at the end? And then you work your story around that. And, I mean, you can point to, I mean, Godfather is obviously an easy example because you say, well, Michael Corleone starts the movie here, he ends the movie here, and that's the journey that we go on. And that journey would be interesting irrespective of when it's set or the specifics of the scenarios in, right? Because that a good man becomes a bad man. That's a compelling story, no matter when, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
that's people follow that. Rocky, is it a boxing movie? Well, yeah, but it's about a guy who who finds his dignity, who finds his self-respect. And that's interesting, irrespective of what sport it's set in or when it's set or where it's set. So that's my thought.
I like that. Character driven storytelling is, I mean, personally, that's what I go for, right? I'm much more interested in movies where, and not just movies, but books too,
Yeah.
where you bond with this character and you become invested in whatever they're doing. And it really is, it's almost like they take on a life of their own. And I
Yeah.
think, isn't that sort of why fan fiction is so popular? Is
Hmm.
because then people will take those characters and they'll put them in other random scenarios, right?
Yeah.
That may not even jive with the whole universe that they've been originally written in, but because they have such an affinity for them, they'll go ahead and they'll write these other stories. I think that's really cool, actually. I don't know
Yeah.
how you feel about fan fiction, but I don't write it, but I appreciate why other people do.
That's exactly where I'm at when it comes to it. Yeah, it's not, I don't even read it, but I know the voluminous amount of it. And I think that says something about the richness of these worlds that are created by all of
Yeah.
these various crafts people, that somebody who watches, say, Star Trek is like, I want to write a story set in this world, or I want to spend more time with these characters in terms of whatever fantasia I create in my own mind. I think, hey, great.
Yeah. Yeah. It just goes to show that creativity breeds creativity when it's
Yeah,
done well.
yeah,
Like when you're
absolutely.
putting
Yeah,
art out into the world, the best case scenario is somebody sees it and they get excited about it and they're like, I need to go do something now with that because
hmm,
it's moved me.
yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, the best art is a conversation with the person who's taking it in, and sometimes those conversations go in unexpected ways, which I would say that's one example of that.
Is it hard for you as somebody who teaches how to think critically around this particular art form? Is it hard for you to just sit down and enjoy a movie, or are you always analyzing it?
I would say that always analyzing is why I enjoy it.
Good
So,
answer.
so I can't shut off that part of my brain, but I don't want to because that's what I love. I love being like, why am I feeling whatever I'm feeling about this? And then I love that process of, when I review a film, right? I have colleagues who are note takers. They're real diligent, like while the movie's going, and that's not how my brain is wired. When I'm watching a film to review it, I'm just sitting there, I'm taking it in, I'm experiencing it, and I'm sort of keeping a mental tab of like, well, how am I feeling about this? And then when it's done, I'm like, okay, what did I feel about that movie? Why did I feel that way? Did I like it? Why did I like it? Did I not like it? Why did I not like it? And I give myself whatever. Sometimes the length of time is like the drive home from the theater to, because if I have to turn something around really quickly. But that's the fun of it for me. That is the enjoyment because I think, as I said earlier, I mean, every filmmaker is engaging you in a conversation. So it's like, well, what do you want to say back to it?
Wow. Were you always like this?
Maybe, I think people ask that like, are you always like this? They say it with more judgment in their eyes.
Oh,
I,
I'm picturing little Zaki,
yeah,
little kid Zaki back in the early 80s watching Indiana Jones or whatever,
yeah.
right?
No, you
Like,
got my number. That's true.
yes, yes. Oh, I was into
Um,
it, brother.
yeah,
I wanted to be Indiana Jones.
that's
Like that was
funny.
my
Oh, you,
goal in
you
life.
might appreciate actually. This is my Indiana Jones jacket that I'm wearing right now.
Very
This is
nice.
the this is a replica of the Last Crusade jacket actually
Wow.
that that Harrison Ford wore in that movie. So just by chance.
Amazing.
So I've always loved movies, right? I always, ever since I was a little kid. When we were very young, I lived in Chicago. I was born in Chicago, and my family we moved to Saudi Arabia. My dad got a job there in the early 80s, so like 83, I want to say. And from that age, I was already into movies. So I was like 3 going on 4, and I loved movies, you know? And I remember we went to Saudi Arabia and we had VHS dupes of like, Star Wars and Superman, Superman 2, and the Black Hole and Tron and all this stuff. So like those were the movies I was exposed to at a very young age. And it's funny because we're talking about Marlon Brando. It's like I remember being a little kid and Superman, the movie, the first name that comes up is Marlon Brando.
Oh yeah,
And he
that's
plays
right.
Jor-El in that movie for
That's
like
right.
4 minutes, right? Like I mean, he's in it for it's like a glorified cameo. But as a kid, I was like, well, that's clearly he's like a big deal, So like I think of Marlon Brando as well, he's Jor-El in Superman, and then everything goes out from there. And so that's what pointed me to The Godfather and everything else. It's weird. It came out of Superman, honestly.
Wow. I'm sure
Um,
Brando would be thrilled to know that that's how
that's
he was introduced to a whole generation.
I mean, it's and I think about that too because like Christopher Nolan did Batman Begins, in 2005, and he kind of followed that same thing where it's like Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman and Rutger Hauer and all these big name actors, and I was like, kids are gonna watch that movie and seek out Michael Caine and seek out Liam Neeson and everything else just based on them being in a Batman movie. But anyway, sorry to go back to your point. My favorite movie of all time is Planet of the Apes from 1968
Really?
with Charlton Heston. Yeah, it's my all-time favorite movie.
Wow. I'm shocked, but okay.
Yeah, I saw that. Gosh, I was probably 9 or 10, I think, when I saw that movie, and it just blew me away. It blew me away because it thrilled me and terrified me,
Yeah.
and all those things at once. And I was so plugged into like I was a little kid, but like the metaphor where it's like commenting on racism and all this other stuff, and I definitely glommed right onto that. But also like the filmmaking. That was the first time I watched a movie, and I was really like, how did they do that? And I was looking at the makeup effects with
Mm.
the ape appliances and the filming and the editing. I was really like, I mean, again, I was a little kid. I was in Saudi Arabia. That was the interesting thing actually, because that movie was banned in Saudi Arabia for some weird reason.
Weird.
I still don't know why, but it every because I tried to rent it, didn't have it, and I was able to get a hold of a copy. Somebody who was like visiting Dubai taped it off a TV, and they smuggled it to me like some you know
A brick of
artifact that
hashish.
it really, yeah, that's what it felt like, and so there was definitely that aspect of it. But I would say that was the first time I analyzed a movie was watching Planet of the Apes.
Wow. That's so interesting.
And I still, to this day, I love it. It's so funny because like this past week, 2 weeks, it was Christmas break, and I put on Planet of the Apes. I just watch it, whenever. And my 10-year-old, he watched it with me, and he's like, "Let's watch all of them." And I'm like, "Oh, son, you've made me so proud." And we watched all of those 5 original movies. We just watched the 3 reboot films. I'm like, man, I feel like I did my job as a dad because my kids like the Planet of the Apes movies.
Wow. I did not I saw that movie when I was a kid and it freaked me out so bad.
Oh yeah,
I
it
didn't
scared the
like it.
crap out of me.
I
Oh,
didn't
I
like it at
scared.
all. But what's so
But
weird
that
is I
it was
also saw
exciting. It was the fear was exciting to me, and it was.
I
I'm not a
see.
big horror movie fan. I'm not, but I remember as a kid I had nightmares like, oh my God, the apes are gonna hunt me or whatever. I had dreams
Totally.
like that, and I think that was sort of the allure of that movie. But I think it still holds up. I mean, it's 55 years old now. I think it's still great. It still has a lot to say,
Yeah.
and I think it's remarkable. I think the effects are still amazing, by the way.
This is how I feel about Jaws. I consider it a perfect movie. There is never a
Oh yeah.
time I don't want to watch it. I will watch it
Hmm.
all the way through every time I put it on. I will sit and watch it, like multitask. I love that movie.
Oh,
And
it's
even
great.
though it was made in the 70s and, could probably have been better. No, it could not have been better. I don't think that
Yep.
movie could possibly be better. And if anyone
Yep.
tries to remake it, I'm going to be furious. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Oh, yeah. And Jaws is a great example, right? Of what I was talking about earlier about you build your story out from the character because what makes
Yes.
Jaws interesting is that Martin Brody is interesting. We
Yes.
care like the shark is an abstract, but here's a guy who's terrified of the water, who's a sheriff on an island. How does he get through this? That's what's interesting.
Yes. Yes. And the other characters too, which kind of come together, and they're such an interesting ensemble that they play off of each other. I mean, it's just when they're sitting around the table on the boat,
Hmm.
swapping stories, drinking, like that is amazing
Yeah.
storytelling. I love it.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally agree.
I feel like, and this could totally be my old age bias, but I really do feel like movies that were made, I'd say before the 90s, tend to have a little bit more depth in storytelling. And that could just be that. I mean, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert. I've seen a lot of movies, but I think part of it is CGI has taken away a lot of the lift from what actors needed to do and what writers and storytellers needed to do. And
Yeah.
in some ways that's really exciting. Like we get to see some beautiful things. I've seen some beautiful movies, but the movies that really made a difference to me tend to be almost comically rudimentary. They're pared down. There are things like Dog Day Afternoon, right?
Hmm.
Like Crazy Guy in a Bank, right? Like
Yeah.
that is not something that people are going to go and like get gripped by, and yet it's so gripping.
Yeah.
Check me. Am I full of shit, or has there been that shift?
Well, I mean, there's been a shift, let's put it that way, because technology has definitely moved the goalposts, but that's always been the case, right?
Mm,
Like this conversation, you can substitute out CGI and say miniatures and models, and that's the complaints people had about Star Wars,
yeah,
right? And now, like I remember the commentary in the mid 80s and on where it's like, oh, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg ruined everything. That was and I can't speak to that because Steven Spielberg for me showed me what movies are supposed to look like, right? And that's baseline for me.
right.
So I think to some extent this is all it is, and I try to check myself all the time. I'm like, there's what I like, and then there's what they like, and oftentimes it's just a reflection of just the shifting baseline for what is current, right? I look at like the Transformers films, for example, and I'm like, well, these are mostly awful with rare exceptions, and yet, I talk to my students, and they look at them with nostalgia, right? Or they look at maybe a better example is like the Pirates of the Caribbean films, which
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of. I appreciate the craft in them, but I'm like they're not for me. They're not aimed at me, right? When the first one came out, I was 23, right? So it's like I had my stuff already, right? I had my franchises and everything. But again, you know, like your average college student, well, they grew up watching Pirates of the Caribbean. And they're plugging into those films in a very different way than me.
it
And
makes
I
sense.
try to be, you're right. I try to be sensitive to that where
Yeah,
I'm like, and some things, just to be clear, I do think there is the case for things being objectively bad. However, I do think in other regards, there's, this yeah, it's not. I don't find Jack Sparrow likable or whatever, but maybe that's just me.
right, right, right. But aside from just like the storytelling or whatever, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind is an
Hmm.
objectively great movie, right?
Sure.
Like you watch it and you are just sucked into it, even though you don't get a glimpse of an alien till the very end. And I
Hmm.
think they even went back and put that in at some point. Like I think they had some
Yeah,
other, they did a
that's the
re-edit or
special
something.
edition. Yeah.
Yeah. But so much excitement and anticipation and tension can be built just with like very little. And but you
Yeah.
have, these characters who are so compelling on screen, and their interactions and the realness of their life, right? It just didn't. I guess what it is it doesn't, those movies don't feel glossy. They don't feel
Yeah.
unreal. They feel like they're
Right.
just everyday people having these experiences. And I think maybe it was just, you know, I didn't grow up in a glossy world. And
Yeah, sure.
I don't relate to these fancy, shiny people,
Yeah.
having these wild adventures. I mean, I really, I can totally relate to somebody's dad going crazy and making a mountain out of mashed potatoes while
Yeah.
his wife is screaming and leaving the house. Now that I can relate to.
Yeah. Well, and obviously Spielberg, you talk about somebody, I mean, he was like 25, 26 when he did Close Encounters. I mean, he's a kid, you know
Right.
what I mean? And so it's like some people are just born with it, right? And
Right.
that's him. I mean, it's just preternatural. He directed I believe it was the pilot episode of Night Gallery, which was the Rod Serling. It was like the series, Rod Serling did the Twilight Zone
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
50s and 60s. So this was like early 70s. It was like his second anthology series. And the show is kind of a mixed bag, but like Spielberg comes in, it's his first job, and he just like right away, you watch it now and you're like, well, this guy was it was destined
Uh-huh.
to just become king of Hollywood. You know what I mean? He was that talented. And I think what we saw with Close Encounters is a couple of things. Number one, he did Close Encounters instead of doing Jaws 2, right? Which
Smart
he
call.
goes from very much so, right? And I'm somebody, by the way, who's like, I think Jaws 2 is like okay. I don't the other ones are terrible. 2 is like the okay, good enough, part 2. But he was smart to not do it because he said he's like, I'm just going to compete with myself. Why would I do that, right? So in other words, he had the maturity at that stage to be like, I want to leverage my cachet from Jaws and apply it towards this idea, this original idea. And again, same thing. Like, what is Close Encounters about? Yeah, it's about the aliens, but it's about this guy who's going through a divorce and his relationship with his family. And what is that? Like, that's the interesting thing. We care about Roy and his emotional journey, and that's what makes the end meaningful. Although I stand to this day, and I think Spielberg agrees that the idea that he would get on that spaceship and leave his kids behind, I refuse to believe any father who cares about his kids would do that.
It's possible. That actually did create the conflict within me. But by that time, frankly, you're so caught up in it.
Hmm.
You're just so like out of control into this fucking spaceship like that has just landed, right? And like it's just such a thing that it doesn't even matter. Sorry, kids. And now you know what kind of parent I am. I would totally fucking get on that spaceship. Sorry. They'll be fine. Um okay, well that's good. I accept you pushing back on me and telling me to check my grumpy old ageness.
And I'm right there with you, by the way, just to be clear. I feel exactly the same way, but I'm always like, well, I'm sure all of this has happened before. It'll happen again, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. The thing is, movies like music, right? Like I'm a fanatic about music, but there is such a huge range. Not every movie is supposed to be a blockbuster or a Spielberg movie. Not every
Yeah,
movie is supposed to be a Hollywood movie. There's plenty of
that's right.
amazing indie films out there, right?
Yeah,
And so, yeah, like it's really hard to just put a pin in and say, well, this is what a movie should be. I think a movie
yeah,
should be whatever it should be, whatever it's supposed to be according to the people that are making it. And
yeah.
maybe the audience, maybe it's not made for a general audience or whatever, but there's still value there as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and another thing to think about is out of all the movies that you watch, and just speaking for myself, I mean, I watch a lot of films, right? How many of those movies do I rewatch? Even the ones I really like, how many of them do I rewatch? Not a ton, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And ultimately time is the testament because it's like you can love something in the moment and then revisit it 10 years later, be like, oh, that wasn't, no, what was I thinking, right? And there's other ones where maybe you're just like, okay, and then you watch it again several years later and you're like, holy crap, what did I miss here,
Right.
And the movies, out of all the hundreds and thousands of movies that have made, how many do we watch in our life more than 5, 6 times? I mean, it's a relatively short list.
It's true.
And and that our list of like these are my rewatchables, well, it's going to be different for every generation, And I know that. That's talking about with my kids. Like I'm gratified that they are seeking out movies that are important to me, but I also know like they're going to have their own stuff and it's going to be something that doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's a good point. It's a good point to remember in general for No, I mean I'm serious because I consume so much different media and art, right? And everybody, we're all our own little focus group of one. We all think we have it all figured out and that we know what's
Yep.
good and quality. And you're right. There's so much room for everybody to define what is good for themselves, and yet so much time and energy goes into arguing about this on the
Hmm.
internet.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
let's talk about that because it seems like there is no end. I mean, you've got warring factions basically around certain franchises and certain
Hmm.
actors and certain, directors and all of that. And it can get very intense. Why are people so is it just that we're fucking bored and that we don't want to go to work and so we're going to sit on the internet and argue, or do you think that there is something to movies that make people insane to defend their position on them?
Well, I think it's a little of column A and a little column B, right? I think
Okay.
definitely, but I think, yeah. First of all, we're in this age of quote unquote stan culture, where and which that by itself, I'm like the word stan. It comes from the song by Eminem about an unhealthy, fixated fan, and I'm like, let's have some reflection on when we call ourselves that. That's not a compliment. Like, oh, I'm a, whatever. I'm a Lady Gaga stan. All right, well, she wouldn't be thrilled by that, but we feel this attachment to the thing we like. So let's say I like something and I'm like, hey, Amanda, I really like this. And you're like, oh, I saw that. I thought it sucked. Well, now I interpret that as you're attacking me and my tastes,
Mm.
right? And one thing I learned the hard way, admittedly, is this online arguments. No one's mind is going to be changed. And I don't need to defend my position. I can just like the thing I like, and that's fine. And I got there eventually, and I'll tell you, my life is much more sanguine, and I get my and I get my daily eight as a result of that because and honestly and truthfully, like somebody will be like, Zaki, you hated this movie. I loved it. You know what I say? I'm like, you know what? Like this is my answer. This is my rote answer, and I mean it sincerely. I'm glad you liked it. I wish I liked it the way you did, but I'm glad you got something great out of it. That's all that matters, right? That's really all that matters. Does it matter
Totally.
to you whether I agree with, you know what I mean? It doesn't. And so the internet has created this need people have to not just feel what they feel, but make everyone feel what they feel.
Right.
Uh, and
Oh, yes.
and I've seen this enough. And as a critic, obviously, I've taken my share of brickbats from people, and that's actually been very clarifying for me because I'm just like I just know that not everybody is going to respond this way. Like I don't get messages when I write a positive review. I get hate mail when I write a negative review from fans, right? And so I realize it's because most people read a positive review and they're like, "Yeah, I agree with that," and they get on with their day. And so it's kind of like for me, it's clarifying because I was like, it's not really aimed at me. It's just aimed at the idea that I disagree, and I just don't have time to bother with this. But I mean, I get it, like if I have something I'm passionate about, then, I want to share that passion and I don't want to see it dogged on.
Yeah.
So I get it, but again, I just think there's healthier ways to express that than just sort of bloviating online anonymously at that usually.
Yes. Yes. No, I think that's true. I mean, look, this is a symptom of something much larger than just film, right? Or
Yes,
film fandom, because it happens in every area of our society at this point. It's
sure.
political, it's sports, it's whatever. Um,
That's yeah, and I mean, if I can just pick up on
yeah,
that point, whether you're talking about a presidential candidate or a sheikh, you know what I mean? Like they have their online fans
yeah,
who it's like they're just doing searches. Oh, does anybody saying anything about my guy? And I'm going to become a bullet taker. And that applies whether it's Donald Trump or Noman Ali Khan or Zack Snyder. They're all cut from the same cloth. And so you see those patterns enough, you're like, okay, well, I get this now. And
yeah.
I'm like, that's a lot of you stuff. That doesn't have to involve me.
Interesting. I like that. I like that you have that approach as a critic, because I think that a lot of people think critics are just sitting up there in an ivory tower. I don't know what kind of ivory tower a critic would be sitting in, but you know, doling out their
One not made of ivory.
yes. doling out your opinions, and the rest of us mortals must listen to you. And what it is because everybody has their own different opinions or whatever. The critic ends up being the person who breaks the tie, or you're arguing with somebody, this movie sucked, no, this movie was good, well, this critic said it was amazing, right? So I think it ends up being sort of like leverage for people to fight amongst themselves.
Sure.
When you are sitting down to watch a film and you're going to review it, and you're reviewing on a large platform and you have your professional reputation, it's not like you're just shitting out opinions on Twitter. You actually have to, cross your T's and dot your I's. What's your process for judging
Mhm.
a piece of film? When you go in there, what are your, I mean, obviously, you talked about the importance of character, but like, what is it that you're looking for? Is it overall, I want to judge this film on its own merits? Are you going in with an idea based on the previous director's work? I mean, where
Mhm.
do you even begin?
Yeah. Well, so, film criticism inherently, it's trying to approach objectively something that is subjective, right? And
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
that inherent paradox there. And I have to take every film, I have to judge it on its own. However, I have to contrast it with similar works. So in other words, I'm not going to say, oh, Migration, which is the CGI kids family animated movie, it's not as good as Scream 6, because, well, it's just two different things, and those are both films I reviewed, right? So Scream 6, I'm going to measure it against other films in that genre. I'm going to measure it against other, certainly in the Scream series. Whereas, something like Migration, I'm going to look at it as compared to, I don't know, Trolls or whatever, right? So there is that. Uh, that being said, you bring your own experiences, your life experiences into the theater with you. You can't shut that off, right? And so what I often say is that a movie review is not a testament for all time. It's a testament for that time. And my opinion may change, right? I don't profess or promise that that's going to be something that lasts forever, but I say this is what I thought having walked out of the theater. And the thing with film reviews, and this is my big beef with Rotten Tomatoes, which has really just been an absolute pox on what we do, and it's devalued and diminished it, is film criticism is about finding the critic who you like, who you agree with, and seeing what they have to say. And it's about me as a critic forming a relationship with those people who like what I have to say,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I point to my own experience. Roger Ebert was that for me when I was a kid. Every Friday, I would go to the Chicago Sun-Times website. I would read Roger's latest reviews. Sometimes I agreed with him, sometimes I didn't. But as a baseline, I knew generally speaking, we were coming from the same place. And so I learned to trust Roger Ebert. And so I can only hope that people have a similar relationship with me.
Totally get this. So basically it's I think the difference is we view critics as being like judges that like are
Mhm.
laying down a law. This is a good film. And if but I think what you're saying is the film critic is like your really cool nerdy friend who watches all the movies and then tells you what
Yeah.
they think. And then you, being, your own person, are going to go see the movie based on that. But like, you might like it, you might not. It doesn't mean that the critic is wrong or whatever. It's just that this is a person that you can relate to, and
Yeah.
that you can trust for the most part. I remember watching Roger, what is it,
Ebert,
Ebert, and
Siskel and Ebert.
yeah, yeah, that was the show, right? The thumbs up, thumbs down.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
remember watching that as a kid. We watched it all the time. It was like a big
Oh
part of
yeah.
our family life. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking, how do you get that job? How
You
did
know,
those guys get that job?
I remember my very first time going to a press screening because I grew up in Chicago, which is where Siskel and Ebert were, and I
Uh,
went to a community college. I was the film critic for the our college paper. Very first film screening, press screening that I went to was fall of '98, and it was a movie called The Siege with Denzel Washington. And I went downtown to city, and it was this press room, and sitting, at the back of the room was Roger Ebert over there. Gene Siskel was over there. And to this day, my probably one of the greatest regrets I have in my life is I didn't go up and talk to them. I didn't talk to Roger Ebert, who I adored. And never gonna have the chance now, and
Yeah.
I was so intimidated. And I think about it now, and I'm like, if I was like, "Hey, I'm a big fan of your work," the worst thing he would have been was like, "Hey, thanks." You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't talk to him, and but they had a big impact on my life. And to this day, it's so funny because some very gracious people on the internet have gathered as many episodes of Siskel and Ebert that they can't put them on YouTube. And I put those on sometimes, and I'm still learning things
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
them about how to engage. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. Can you believe that?
No.
And I'm still learning from them.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah, that show, I had almost forgotten about it until we started talking. And I just remember how important, like, and, we weren't allowed to see rated R movies. So that was really the only chance I got to see some of those clips.
Like
And like
clips.
I would, yeah. Before we go, because you're very generous with your time, but and I don't want to take too much, but I'd love to hear, the premise of this podcast is about centering creativity in your life, and how we can pursue these kinds of endeavors, even if you're told from the time you're tiny that you have to be practical and whatever. And creativity, the arts, filmmaking, all of these things are often considered, at least by parents, to be a terrible choice, right? And I understand where that comes from because I have my own kids, and you want them to have a future that's stable, and you want them to be able to take care of themselves and whatever. But from your perspective, somebody who's grown up loving movies and who's now working as part of this industry
Mhm.
and teaching young people who are aspiring filmmakers, what advice would you give to, or do you give to young people about, the feasibility of filmmaking as a career?
I mean, well, I don't mince words. I mean, it's a tough slog. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you can't succeed in it. But I mean, don't have any illusions about getting off the bus to LA and, somebody handing a directing job to you. You got to work your way up. But that being said, the opportunities are absolutely there, and people who are willing to work for it will be rewarded, right? I speak from experience just in terms of some of my closest friends. My friend Sean Coyle, who I went to high school with, and I've been great friends with him for a long time. He's currently executive producing a show for Disney Junior, which is like, well, I can't say, but it's one of their big franchises. And how did he get to that place where he could do that? He hunkered down, man. 20 years ago, he was a PA on that 70s show. He was
Uh,
pulling cable and just doing that stuff. And so cut to the present, and that's where he's at. My friend Brian Hall, who I host my movie podcast with, he just wrapped up 2 seasons writing a Star Wars show for Disney Plus, and it's just you do the work. If you're consistent about it, it will be rewarded. And the one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was in this business, but I think this is applicable to most walks of life. It's really about three things. You have to be good at what you do, you have to be easy to deal with, and you have to meet your deadlines. And the secret there is that really you only need any two of those at a given time. So in other words, if you're good at what you do and you're easy to deal with, you can slip a deadline. And I carry that with me because me personally, I'll tell you, maybe my writing is good, maybe it's not. I'm not the best judge of that, but I'll tell you one thing: I meet my deadlines, and I'm easy to deal with, and that's the key thing. If you stick to those three, you'll be okay.
that's awesome. Very practical advice that sounds like it's coming from both a professor and a dad. But I really appreciate that, actually. I think that that's true, because the last thing, to me, I want more art. People should be making it. But I also think you're absolutely right. Film is an industry, and there's so much that you need to know about how things work together, who the different players are, how things happen. And this is true in publishing, it's true in everything. You have to, if you have those aspirations, in my opinion, it's a great idea to take low level jobs and work your way up, because that's the only way you really get intimately familiar with this whole process. And that's only going to make you better at what you do, right?
And if I may add, another thing is it will allow you to hopefully internalize empathy for all the other people. Once you rise up the chain, all the people underneath you, you'll empathize where they are in their work life.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, oh, one real quick thing I wanted to ask you about
Yeah.
the strikes, the strikes that
Yes.
happened this year. They were very successful. I
Hmm.
was totally impressed with how that rolled out. Hollywood in particular has a bad reputation for, you know, churning through people, for having some exploitative tendencies, especially for
Yeah.
people who may or may not be white
Yeah.
or male.
Right. Yeah.
So, how do you see that shifting over time? Is there a change afoot? Do you think Hollywood is going to stay, top of the pile, or are we going to see fragmentation? Are we going to see these different sort of areas where film takes root and industry grows around them?
Well, I think the centrality of Hollywood as sort of the driving vector of cultural conversation, cultural change, I think that's already fragmented to your point. Certainly in the last 7, 8 years, as user-generated platforms have propagated, so things like TikTok and whatever have diminished the glare of, star power. I don't think Hollywood will ever completely fade away, but I mean, it's certainly not what it was 30 years ago, right? Like it's hard to think of a star who people will be like, "Oh, the new X movie is out. Like the movie starring X person. Let's go see it just because that
Yeah,
person is in it."
yeah.
Whereas, when I was a kid, like Harrison Ford, it's like, "Oh, Harrison Ford has a new movie. We're going to go see the new Harrison Ford. What is it about? I don't know. It's Harrison Ford is in it." I don't see that anymore, you know? You've got a few of them still kicking around. Like Tom Cruise is still at that level, but who's the next Tom Cruise, right? I was just reading about how Mr. Beast is going to have like a Amazon series or something, and this is like a YouTube personality. Yeah, exactly. The
Oh
look you're
no,
giving me
that
right now,
sounds
that
terrible.
yeah, I'm like, well, yeah, I don't understand that. My kids know Mr. Beast. I'm like, okay, but this is somebody with millions, hundreds of millions of followers, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we're already seeing that, and so the strikes were a good thing because what they allow for, and I don't know how long this will be the case, but they allow for a recognition that streaming has, on balance, been a net negative in terms of the ability of individuals to have power. So writers and not like the big stars, the above the line stars, but like average working actors, Streaming has been a disaster. And I've been like the Cassandra
Uh-huh.
screaming from the top of the hill for the better part of the last decade. I'm like, this is a bad thing. We're headed to a bad place because it started, in 2013, Netflix did House of Cards, and they just threw money at it. I mean, like, movie money at this show, and then that led to this gold rush. And the thing I kept saying again and again, I'm like, they are spending money like it's going out of style. How are they intending to make that money back?
Right.
And the strike really exposed that because what you had is a situation where writers' rooms were shrunk. Sometimes there were no writers' room. It was like one person. And that means that there's a whole lot of writers who or potential writers who aren't getting experience, weren't getting health benefits, weren't getting paid. I mean,
Right.
and so the both the WGA strike and the SAG strike really centered the idea that these industries work because of the people making this stuff. And it's not the bean counters or the executives or the Bezoses or whatever. It's just your average folks. So I was very happy. I would have, I'm glad they hung in there. I'm glad they didn't break. And the studios had to pony up, and good. I'm glad.
Excellent. Okay, and then just a tack on question, because I'm
Yeah,
that pushy.
please.
What's
Yeah.
your what's your Cassandra point of view on AI and how
I mean,
that's going to, that's rolling out?
this is a problem, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not naive. Like it's not going away. It's here to stay. The question is how do we use it, right? And I think my concern, at least in terms of the industry, I mean, I have broader concerns about like in life because I think we have a whole lot of family members who use Facebook or whatever who are wholly unprepared about how AI is just going to be smacking them in the face. I mean, this election is going to be absolutely terrifying. I'm honestly
Yeah.
terrified.
Yeah.
But in terms of on screen, I think the rise of deep fakes and things like that, look, that's baked in at this point. It's not going away. What I hope is that there's an effort to ensure that whatever is done with the not merely the approval, but cooperation and participation of the people who are being deep faked.
Yes, 100%. I think that's a, I mean, look, I hate the idea of putting creativity in the hands of a non-human. I just hate it.
Right.
And I understand,
Yeah.
like, there's a fine line, right? Like, there's a difference between using a tool
Sure.
of technology to accomplish something and then just saying, well, no, this is the thing that's going to do the work from here on out. And
Right.
we're a ways away from that for sure.
Right.
But there's still all kinds of stuff happening, like you said, that is, I think, going to cause a lot of shenanigans, that is also devaluing a lot of creative work. And I think as a creative
Yeah.
person, that's the part that upsets me. On the other
Yeah.
hand, I appreciate good human centric, human created work. And
Yeah.
so I'll always be throwing my money at that. And my hope is that other
Yeah.
people will too.
An example that comes to mind is the latest Indiana Jones film, the last Indiana Jones film, and it begins with this prologue where you have, Indiana Jones from 40 years ago, and they use deep fake technology on Harrison Ford, and I think the overall effect is like 80% effective. There's a few moments there where it doesn't work. But my point is it was James Mangold, the director, supervised it. Harrison Ford is the person who was going through that. He was the one who approved it's a performance tool, is my
Right.
point. And it's something that Harrison Ford looked at and said, that's my performance underneath the digital thing. And so I look at that as no different than, Andy Serkis as Gollum
Right.
or Caesar or whatever. That so as long as there is a person who's using it as a tool to help the art that they're making, you know what? All hands on deck, whatever works. But it's the potential for shenanigans that I am continually concerned by.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Um, and I think I actually, we're not alone. There's many, many people, both creative and non-creative people who I actually, there are no non-creative people, but creative people and people who are, my husband works in software,
Sure,
right? He worries about this incessantly. We're all kind of like looking at this thing going, what the hell is happening here? But as long as we're willing to pump the brakes when it needs to happen, I think we'll be okay. This has been such a great conversation. I'm so pleased that you joined me. I honestly, this went too fast. I probably could ask you 800 more questions.
well, if I'd love to join you again. This is such a thrill. I really.
Yay, come back again. Yeah, movies are such an important part of our lives. And you don't really realize it until you stop and think back about how much of your view of the world and how much of your self-discovery was maybe, sparked by something that you saw in the theater. And yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great that that's your job. And I'm really proud to know you. I'm really proud that this is something that you do, because for me, you need people that take art seriously. You need people that are invested. Even if you're not out there making films, you want the best out of that industry and you want the best out of creatives, and you're training another generation of people to be good creatives, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that makes your role really important in all of this. And so thank you for doing that.
I'm absolutely honored, like I said, that you thought of me, and I truly, what a great conversation. I'm just glad to be a part of it.